Alrighty, kids. Alright, we're working on the HVAC, and I figured that now would be a good time to make a little video about this. So, what we have here is a Promaster, a 14, although they're all identical, that is having trouble with the mode door. The way this and all modern cars work is there's no cables anymore, unfortunately, because those were easy to fix when they broke, and they almost never broke. There's these little motors, and they actuate things. The primary one is called the blend door. That blends between the cold air from the air conditioning condenser and the hot air from the heater core. That's all contained in this box, which I may be able to show you, which is the heater box. I don't know if you can call it, you can't see that. You can see that cylindrical looking thing. That is the one beginning outer piece of this rather large assembly that gets bolted into the firewall, directly into the firewall at the factory, and that's the whole assembly that does it all. So the temperature control, or the blend door, is on the driver's side, basically directly above the gas pedal, in this sort of area, way back there. 2 Phillips screws hold it on. If you turn the knob and nothing happens, that's what's going on. Your blend control is not working for one reason or another. Quite simple, and it's only a single actuator. The motors themselves are, well, I'll show you. The van has 3 motors in total, and they're all identical, which is nice because that makes them cheaper, and you can buy it once, or you can buy spares. I keep spares on the shelf because there's a lot of problems. This plastic piece, which you can't see, the black piece, is the motor, and as you can see, it's retained to this bracket by a few screws, and the whole bracket is retained to the side of the assembly. The nub of this thing, I'm screwing up, okay. The nub of this thing, the output of it, you could say, is that white plastic knurled shaft right there. And if I were to move this, will it move? Is it still plugged in? Give it a second. It is still plugged in currently. It's not moving. I'll move it back. Move. Let's see it move. That one's not moving for some reason. Oh, because I have my scan tool, and I was going to command it. This is the way these things are diagnosed, by the way. When you go to a shop and he's got a real scan tool, he can open up the left air distribution motor, which is just what that thing's called, and he can call up any percentage and tell it, like we're at 0, let's make it 100. F6. Let's see if yeah, you can see it moving. It's just a little stepper motor, that's all it does. Not rocket science. And many cars will also have feedback where it has 127 counts left to right, and it knows its position, and it learns, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the important part is that little knurled shaft goes into this doohickey on that side. You can see the inside of the shaft where it's knurled, and it grabs that. And on this side, you see these 3 channels in this wheel. I guess they're on this side. Okay. You see, if you can see, you see that one, like that. This one, blah, 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 like that. And this is an outer race here. So those 3 pins go in there, and to those pins are attached a little armature that controls a sort of a blade inside the main heater control box. The blade kind of looks like that. It has a shaft that goes through it on each side, and it outputs there, and that's connected to a pin, and that's connected to this wheel. And when the wheel turns, it either opens or closes these positions. And I don't exactly know how it works that you can get with how can I say this? One armature controls the foot control, turns it off or on. The other one controls the amount of air that comes out the dash, and the other one controls the amount of air that comes out the base of the windshield. And somehow you can have it so that you could have windshield in feet, or just windshield, because what this does is the wheel, as the wheel turns, it can reverse, and the pin will go down a different path, or some bullshit like that. I don't know, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out. I'm also not smart enough to figure out why this one isn't working. I have my theories, because we've had this apart. If you look at my other videos, you'll see that I had a video where the fan direction was backwards, so I took all this apart, and I think I put this wheel back in wrong, because you can clock it any way you want, and it'll fit in a variety of different locations where all 3 pins will work, but it's misindexed to this main shaft, so that when the actuator goes to turn it, it's just going to go click, 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 click as it's beating itself to death because it's not in the right position. You can also see that there's arrows on the back that show the assembly tech where to put the pin in which race, and you can see the other sides of the race on there, but that doesn't do me much good when I'm upside down on my back, sweat in my eyes, trying to figure this damn thing out. So far, because I'm too lazy to take the entire dash apart and take that whole assembly out and replace it, it's quite expensive too. My solution to be with this van, which now has 680 some thousand miles on it, and this particular problem, is to hillbilly it, which means I set it how I wanted it, which is just all 100% of the air coming out of the dash vents, and I put some Gorilla Tape on it so those levers can't move. It can never adjust. Then what I'll do is I'll use these little tabs to put sort of like a foil dryer vent that will clip in front of this and another one in front of the other side. If you want floor heat in the winter, you'll open that little switch and that'll direct some of the dash air down to the dryer vent, which will run and point at your feet. And there'll be a smaller dryer vent here that points at the windshield that you'll be able to aim. Now that is some hillbilly engineering to try and get around this problem, but in this particular one, because it's probably my fault, the first time I took it all apart once and I was like able to half-ass fixed it, and then that time we took, in that video, we took the entire dashboard apart and spent hours and hours on it. Probably that wheel got put back in wrong, and it was what it did was it stopped working, and I got it where I wanted, and I unplugged the stepper motor, the actuator, so that it couldn't move, and we're back to that. Now I've gone in there. Now I tried putting a new motor in it. The motor wasn't the problem, and then I realized the wheel is misclocked, and I don't know. I'm sick of it. This system of using dryer vents actually in some ways works better than the wheel because you don't lose. You can aim it where you want it. That dryer vent that goes to your feet, if you want to run it to the back, if you're trying to sleep and you happen to be idling the engine, or you want to put air conditioning to the back, or I don't know, you want to heat up a cup of coffee with it because it'll get hot enough to do that. All that kind of happy crap. But the general rule of, and I should finish this whole thing up. There's a third actuator that lives way the hell buried up under there, and it works the door that directs fresh air or outside air or cabin air. And the way that works is, you know that big oval thing that's under the hood on the left side as you look at the front, looks like a big air scoop. On the top of that is the cabin air filter, and if you take the cabin air filter out, you'll see the door behind it that rotates, and it either pulls air from the base of the windshield from the outside, or it rotates and closes that off and pulls it from a simple vent up under the dash in the passenger footwell. You'll also notice that when you shut your van off, after 5 minutes it makes some weird whirring noise. That's that vent automatically closing when the computer goes to sleep to keep little animals and whatnot out of there, which doesn't work because little animals get in there all the time. That is called the recirc motor, or the fresh air door, or but in Chrysler speak they call it the recirc motor. As you can see, pretty much getting to any of this, you can do the fan. You can replace the fan and the fan blower resistor without taking anything out. It's tight, but it comes out. 3 8mm bolts take the fan assembly out. And watch my previous video, because if you get the wrong fan and it's reverse rotation, nothing will work. It'll be blowing air out the hood and you won't notice, and you'll hurl yourself off a high bridge. In this particular case, to get to this stuff, we've taken the glove box out, which you didn't really have to do. You take the main kick panel off and you take this weird white Y thing off. I don't even know what that does. I think it's anti-rattle is what it actually is. Who the hell knows? But you can get to that stuff pretty easy. It's pretty accessible. And compared to most cars, it's extremely accessible, because this is why you pay a mechanic a lot of money to do this bullshit. Jobs like this can take hours and hours of the guy twisted up and he's just hating life, and the next thing you know, he opens fire in a crowd. I should also wrap this all up with saying, one of the things that you can't do that a real mechanic does is he doesn't do anything to this before he tests it here. And the way he tests it is he can go into the computer with a scanner, a mid-level or a high-level scanner, and command the computer to do what he wants it to do. And one way you'll find out if any one of the 3 actuator motors isn't working is you'll command them to move, and if they don't move, you know that's the problem, or you know that it's the wiring to them that's a problem. Or you can command the temperature, or you can command the fan speed, and that general scientific approach is if I can get into the computer, I can tell the computer what I want it to do, and then I can monitor what happens, and that's how I make a test. Rather than you in your backyard, what you're going to do is take a bunch of guesses at it and throw a bunch of parts at it. This is why, especially with air conditioning, which is extremely expensive stuff, and even HVAC stuff like this, just the venting stuff, it behooves you to take it to a real mechanic and just have him diagnose it. Then you can do the repair. The repairs are no more or less difficult than they were in the 60s and 70s. Actually, in some ways, they're easier because these things are arguably better designed than that ridiculous Valiant or that ridiculous Valiant. They're hard to get apart, but once you do, they go together easily, and that's a manufacturing thing. If it's cheap, you can assemble it quickly and easily, it's cheaper to make and build and sell and so on. But the point is, a mechanic won't have a problem, generally speaking, with doing the diagnosis, charging you $50 or $100 for the diagnosis, and armed with an accurate diagnosis, you're in a better position to effect a good repair. Because the diagnosis is the hardest part. There's nothing that's difficult on repairing these things. It's the diagnosis that's changed in the last 40 years since you were a young man and played around with your lousy Valiants with their carburetors and their spark plugs and their whatnots. All right, I have spoken. Live long and prosper.